Okay, so you need to be a good fisherman in order to be profitable. Now, this probably doesn't make the most sense right now, but it's important for us to know that the Bible is made up of principles, patterns, and promises, right? Just off the top of my head and reflecting on the previous video that I posted on here, is a common principle that you'll find in the Bible is multiplication, right? When Jesus fed the 5,000, for example. A promise that I can think of at the top of my head right now is Psalms 37:4. You shall delight in the ways of the Lord, and he will establish the desires of your heart, right? That's a promise. And then a pattern that I can think of is disruption always follows intention, right? This is a godly pattern that every time you intend to do good, disruption is always going to follow, right? This is a godly pattern. So being a good fisherman is actually Gnostic wisdom, right? Gnostic wisdom is essentially wisdom that was hidden from the masses. At least that's what I believe. And today we're going to be covering the 8th login of the Gospel of Thomas. So I hope you're excited and get ready to write down notes because this one is going to be a banger. All right, let's begin. So what does it mean to be a good fisherman? So on this side, obviously you guys can't see it, but I'm looking at my computer and I'm going to read you the 8th login so you get a fresh and a good idea of what a good fisherman is, right? So it reads as follows. Yeshua said, a human being is like a good fisherman who casts his net into the sea. When he pulls it out, he finds a multitude of little fish. Among them, there is one fine, large fish. Without hesitation, he keeps it and throws all the small fish back into the sea. Those who have ears, let them hear. And the beautiful part about this Gnostic wisdom here is that not only does it have commentary, but it also has Bible references, right? So it kind of has other scriptures that pertain or link to this 8th login. So at least now you know that this isn't being pulled out of a philosophical hat, right? At the end of the day, there are biblical references behind this. So there are a couple of key words that I'm going to make known to you right now that are actually going to drive this point across of what it means to be a good fisherman, right? Let me just take off my reading glasses. So the key words that I'm going to make known to you now are casts his net, right? That's one. C is the second one. And then when I just look at the notes right there, multitude. Multitude is another one. And then small fish and the large fish. And then the key one here is without hesitation. And then the rest of the login just basically reads that without hesitation, he cast out all of the small fish back into the sea and he kept the large fish, right? So let's begin by asking ourselves, what is this large fish? And based on the commentary, this large fish is a sense of being, right? It's this amazing discovery that this good fisherman spent so much of his time looking for, right? So now that you have that picture in your mind, let's dive deep into a deeper picture of what it means or what it takes to be a good fisherman. So using these keywords that you see on the board, let's indulge with our imagination for a second, right? Imagine you're a fisherman. You're out at sea, it's terrible weather, the tides and the waves are so heavy, they're free flow. Anything could happen to you at that moment in time. Let's say for this argument, you're alone at this point in time, right? And as a good fisherman, you show up, right? You show up, you go out into sea and you cast out your net into what you believe is there's something there, but continuously you just get exposed to nothing, right? So now this is an act of faith. You going out into sea, into harsh weather conditions, into uncertainty, into barren land, into the wilderness, if you will, right? Just to find something. And this is why when it says without hesitation, that's why it's very important, because now we understand that this good fisherman had to have been there many times and he kept finding the same old thing. And what was that same old thing? It was the little fish, right? So among the little fish, he found the big fish. Now we need to understand and comprehend with our imagination what it took for him to find that big fish. And if it's a net, right, I'm going to try pull up a picture here for you guys just to understand what I'm trying to say here. But if it's a net filled with fish, obviously you need to dig through all of those different types of fish. And one thing that I can understand about digging through such an environment is that fish have scales, right, that can dig into your skin as well. They can poke you. They are amongst those alive and fresh fish, dead fish that smell, that are rotten, that could affect your health, right? But you're going through all of that just to find that sense of being, just to find your big fish, right? And without hesitation, again, this is a very key thing right here. Without hesitation, he abandoned the small fish, right? He abandoned his old ways. He abandoned those small fish because they don't matter anymore. He's found his sense of being. That's supposed to be a crown, but it's a mountain for some reason. He abandoned those small fish. He abandoned his old identity, his old ways of life. What he used to find when it used to be effective back then is no longer effective now, because he has found his sense of being. He has found the large fish. Now, Monday, what does this have to do with trading? Well, it has everything to do with trading. Now that you have this picture of the good fisherman, let's extrapolate these same principles. Remember, principles apply in many different situations, right? Multiplication doesn't only apply in the situation where Jesus fed the 5,000. Multiplication can apply in many other Bible stories, which I'm going to link somewhere up in the screen, right, for you guys to read and study in your own time as well. But this principle of being a good fisherman also applies in your own trading journey. Now, imagine yourself, a beginner. You just got into this game. You understand that you can make a buttload of money within this industry. And so now you find out that I'm smiling because I'm just thinking about this in my own experiences. You find out that there are so many strategies that you could learn and employ within your own arsenal. There's Fibonacci, there's ICC, ICT, SMC, support resistance, Wyckoff, there's Quant, there's Elliott waves. There's just so many theories and theorists and concepts and formulas and strategies that you could possibly learn within your own journey of trading, that now you need to narrow down your focus, right? You need to essentially find your sense of being. And how else would you find your sense of being if you don't show up every day like the good fisherman, right? Just to get sidetracked a bit here, it's important that we realize that Yeshua sees us for who we can become, not for who we are. Because this passage could have well said a fisherman, right? A human being is like a fisherman. But he said a good fisherman, so someone who is already there. So bear that in mind the next time you either place your next trade, or you're learning a new strategy, or you're trying to refine your strategy. It's important for you to see yourself as a professional trader already. And this will make perfect sense when we go through this and this, right? Matthew 22 and James chapter 1. But for now, imagery, right? Imagination. Again, imagine you finally digging through all of those strategies. You're failing, you're blowing accounts, you're asking for loans, you're asking for money, pestering your friends, pestering your family. They don't believe in you. People say you're gambling, especially here in South Africa. That's what you're going to hear the most. You go through course after course after course, mentor after mentor after mentor, but nothing is clicking, right? But bear in mind, you're still being the good fisherman. Why? Because you've cast your net out into the world, trying to find your golden egg, trying to find your sense of being, right? That is what a good fisherman does. He casts his net out into sea out of an act of faith, right? And this is something that we're going to realize in its full magnitude in here, right? The book of James, if you haven't read it already, but we're going to go through it. You need to cast your net out into the world and find what works for you. For me personally, what works for me is ICT, right? I've gone through all of the strategies. I've gone through all of the YouTubers. I've gone through all of the mentorships, and I eventually found my thing, right? My edge, right? And so as a good fisherman, once you find that good fish, it is important for you to abandon, without hesitation, abandon those old ways. Abandon the version of you that used to overtrade, over leverage, that used to go full margin because you simply wanted that dopamine rush, right? Abandon that version of you, because that version of you doesn't matter anymore. In the commentary, it says that once the good fisherman finds his large fish, it is essential for him to keep this fish? Why is it essential? Think of the good fish as your golden strategy. Once you find this golden strategy, you start researching. When does this strategy work? When doesn't it work? How much will it benefit me in the long term? Does it have a good win rate or does it have a good RR, right? There's a difference between win rate and RR. You can't have both, unfortunately. And if you can, please let me know how you do that, because I would really use that advice. But back to the topic at hand. Once he finds the large fish, once you find your edge, right, you're done. Like, that's all you at the end of the day. So I have a page here that actually discusses the characteristics of a good fisherman, right? But it says here the characteristics of a good fisherman are that he is patient, observant, knowledgeable about fish behavior, and is adaptable, right? So does your strategy work under certain market conditions? Does your strategy work under cruel market conditions, calm market conditions, volatile market conditions, things like that, right? It's about being patient and observant. Remember, you are already a professional trader, right? You're not a fisherman, you're the good fisherman, right? At the end of the day. And so what I have here in my notes as well is they know where and when to fish. They are responsible steward of the environment by practicing catch and release and leaving no trace, right? Now, I'm not a fisherman, but I believe that this is important because simply what you do not need, you get rid of, right? You cut it off immediately. You decide, right? The word decide is made up of two words, right? You decide, you cut it off and you say, this is not for me, this is not going to contribute to my strategy. And this is something that I'm probably going to cover in a future video, where social media is the one thing that you need to cut off, especially if you're in this trading journey. Now, I'm not opposed to you journaling your trades on social media for other people to see your journey and for you to actually hold yourself accountable, but it is important for you to be mindful of who you listen to on social media, right? You need to cut that off. You need to decide what you're keeping and what you're throwing away at the end of the day, right? They combine technical skills with respect for nature. So in trading, what does this look like? It looks like technical analysis with fundamentals and sentiment, right? That stuff. They understand that success comes with preparation, persistence, and continuous learning. Now, as I speak, I'm not speaking out of someone who is perfect at what he does, but I'm speaking out of someone who has achieved progress in the journey that he is in, right? My losses went from this to this. So you can best believe that I have managed to regulate my emotions throughout this journey because I was subconsciously practicing what it meant to be a good fisherman. And the way that I subconsciously practiced what it meant to be a good fisherman is simple. I just got into the Word of God, right? And then these points down here, in case you can't see them, those are just my annotations. So those are not very important to the video right now. So now that we have that out of the way, what does scripture say about being a good fisherman? Now that you understand what it is to be a good fisherman, how Monday can I be a good fisherman? Well, we're going to discuss it using scripture. So we're going to read Matthew 22:15 to 21, and it reads as follows, right? It says here, then the Pharisees went out and laid plans to trap him in his words, right? Him is Yeshua in this case. They sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians, right? Teacher, they said, we know that you are a man of integrity and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are. Tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not? But Jesus, knowing their evil intent, said, you hypocrites, you are trying to trap me. Show me the coin that is used for paying the tax. They brought him a denarius, and he asked them, whose image is this, and whose inscription? Caesar's, they replied. Then he said to them, so give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God. Now remember the question that we asked here. Now you know what it means to be a good fisherman. How do I become a good fisherman? And Yeshua just answered there. Give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, but give back to God what is God. And in modern day English, what is Jesus saying here, right? Charge it to the game. Charge it to the game. That's what Yeshua is saying here. Now, Monday, what do you mean charge it to the game? Essentially, let me paint another picture for you. At this time, giving back to Caesar what is Caesar's is, this is Caesar's clearly because his face, his image is on that coin. Now, what is an image? An image is a sense of identity. How do I know this? Genesis 1:26, it says, let us make mankind in our image and in our likeness, so that they may rule over the birds in the sky, the fish in the sea, all the wild animals, all the livestock, and all the creatures on the ground, right? That is an image. An image is a sense of identity. What Yeshua is essentially saying in Genesis 1:26 is, he's saying, let us make mankind in our image and in our likeness. Let us make mankind have the same beliefs that we have, the same emotional convictions that we have, the same attitudes that we have, the same language or thoughts that we have, the same behaviors that we have, the same actions that we have, the same spirit that we have, right? The same fruits that we have. Essentially, that's what Yeshua is saying in that verse, is that only then will they have dominion over the things that we have just listed, right? When they're like us. So now we understand that an image is very important because it's closely tied to identity. And once you are aware of your identity, what precedes or what follows after awareness? Transformation, right? And so what Yeshua is trying to express in this verse, and what ties so deeply into being a good fisherman, is that you have this denarius, you have this money, which clearly belongs to Caesar. Once you give it over to him, what image do you have left? His. You have his image because he is your creator at the end of the day, right? And this ties so well with being a good fisherman, because the good fisherman showed up each and every day, catching the same old fish each and every day. You as a trader showed up each and every day, catching the same losses each and every day, but you still showed up because you were pursuing, not chasing. There's a huge difference. You were pursuing that being, sense of being, that golden egg, that you, essentially, right? I have a picture where Kung Panda opens up the dragon scroll and he discovers that it's his own reflection. That's the secret. You were essentially discovering you, the godlike version of you, the version of you that God already sees. Remember, he sees us as the good fisherman, not just the fisherman, but the good fisherman, right? And so essentially charging it to the game just means that, yes, you'll go through the losses. Yes, you will find little fish. Yes, the sea is cold. The tides are going to sway you back and forth and back and forth. And I know it's annoying. I know that you're going to sustain a lot of harm while you're trying to find your sense of being. But you need to charge that to the game because it's a part of the game. It is a part of the game. You need to experience that before you get to the destination, right? Once you're anointed, you're going to be disappointed before you're appointed. By the way, I didn't just cook that up myself. That's from Myron Golden, right? Very wise man. So, in essence, what you need to understand here is that is what it takes to be a good fisherman. You need to have that mental capacity to charge it to the game, right? Your losses are not you, right? Your setbacks are not you, right? Those are just feedback at the end of the day. As a good fisherman, you need to understand that things happen for you, not to you, right? Right. So we're going to cover our last Bible scripture, which is from the book of James. And this is pertaining to having the type of faith that the good fisherman has, right? So it reads as follows. I hope you guys can see there. And it says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete and lack nothing. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault. To all without finding fault. Right? And it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. I hope I'm not blocking that with my Koki. Anyway, that person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all that they do. Essentially, what this verse is saying is when you pray, you need to stand on business. And I'm glad that that dog interrupted me, because that was a pattern disrupt. You need to stand on business, right? And standing on business here is basically bringing the future version of you that you so aspire to be in the present, right? I can't imagine that that fisherman didn't think of himself as a good fisherman every time he went out into sea, because if he thought of himself as just a good fisherman, then he might as well learn how to fish by taking down notes, by studying. How do I fish, right? I read this one quote which said that a diver doesn't learn how to swim or dive by essentially studying how to dive. He just goes in and dives, and he finds out when he's there, right? And so when it comes to this act of faith, not only as a good fisherman, but as a trader as well, is that you need to believe that you are already a professional trader. Now, I'm not saying that you're not going to experience the valley of despair as discussed in the last video, but essentially what I am trying to drive forward here is that as the good fisherman, you need to know that you are going to endure these trials, right? Like it said, you need to let patience and perseverance have her good and finished work, so that you lack nothing. At the end of the day, when you experience a losing trade or a break-even trade or a winning trade, it's nothing. You don't lack anything because you have everything you want. Why do you think Satan couldn't tempt Jesus when in Matthew chapter 4? It's because Jesus had everything, right? Yeshua had everything. He lacked nothing at the end of the day. You can't give someone who has everything anything. You know what I'm saying? That's a bar. You should write that down. And it's important for us to realize and employ this fisherman mentality into our own trading journeys, to understand that this is the psychology of what it takes to be a good fisherman, of what it takes to be a good trader at the end of the day. First of all, you need to understand what it is to be a good fisherman, which you've just learned in this video, and how I can actually become a good fisherman. And how is that, Monday? One, you need to charge it to the game. Learn to charge it to the game, especially if you're a beginner watching this. Learn to charge it to the game. If you're intermediate to advanced like myself, learn to charge it to the game. If you're professional, I mean quant, and you still have that psychological battlefield in your mind, you need to learn to charge it to the game, right? The charts do not define you. The meanest and most perfect edge that you could have over the markets or over trading is having a life outside of it. I'm going to say that again. The meanest and most aggressive edge that you could have over the markets is having a life outside of it. If you're spending 24 hours in the markets trying to chase that one trade that's going to make you a millionaire, I'm sorry, my friend, but you're going to learn. You're going to learn. Because I did. And in no way, shape, or form am I projecting this onto you, but I'm just trying to emphasize the point that when you get to the valley of despair, because it happens with any other skill in business, in entrepreneurship, even in university while you're studying for a course, is that you're not going to get it firsthand, right? You're going to struggle through it because you need to understand. Your brain needs to meditate on this information, and it needs to drive home the idea that this information now belongs to me, right? You need to identify with that information, right? We discussed identity. We discussed the importance of identity, right? I covered this not deeply in my previous video, but it's in a broader perspective. And now with this topic here, we're getting deeper into the significance of identity, even using Gnostic wisdom, right? The esoteric wisdom that was hidden from the masses. And you could wonder why it was hidden from the masses, because this is gold. This is beautiful, right? This is wisdom that if I had known in the beginning of my trading journey that I need to learn to charge it to the game, let faith and perseverance have her good and perfect work, and to know that these are the characteristics of a good fisherman, right? A good fisherman is adaptable. He's knowledgeable about fish. He's patient. He's disciplined. If I had known that these are the principles and this is what it takes, and this is probably what Yeshua went through with his own ministry, with his own journey. Bro was a carpenter, right? Many argue that he was jacked, but for him to get there, he had to endure. As a carpenter, you're going to endure cuts. You're going to endure bruises. You're going to endure so many things. But then, if that's your craft, if that's the game, then you need to charge it to it. It doesn't define you in any shape or form. So I really hope that this video was helpful. And I urge you, trader, professional trader, to go out into the markets. That was supposed to be cool, but unfortunately, you can't always get what you want in this life. But I urge you to go out into the markets and practice being a good fisherman. Don't give up on back testing. Don't give up on forward testing. Don't give up on demo trading. Don't give up on live trading, right? This is your gift. This is your talent that you have been given. So cultivate it, grow it, and I'll see you at the top. Cheers.